Hey gang, welcome to another episode of Uncle Josh's True Scary Stories. A listener sent in a crazy story about something that happened to him in a bar, so I thought I'd round up a few crazy bar stories for this week. I was a DJ in a bar in college, so I know firsthand how a lot of these stories get started. The collaboration with Swamp Dweller is coming along nicely. He'll have part 1 on his channel, and I'll have part 2 right here, and that'll be coming up real soon. Enough with the babble. Let's jump into some stories about how things can go very wrong very quickly when booze gets into the mix. The Fighter. This is as scary as it is crazy that this could happen in America. I was a bartender for about 2 weeks once. Didn't have any real interest in learning to mix drinks, but a friend really needed the help and offered to teach me, so I agreed. Worst mistake ever. It was this shitty little bar in a town of around 5,000 people. Even for a town with only 3 bars, 2 of which changed owners every couple of months, this place had a reputation. Hard asses, suicide cases, and young idiots trying to win a dare were the people who went to this bar. Cops were there every night of the week, and sometimes with repeat visits on the same shift. A fucking nightmare. In fact, there were only 3 murders the entire 10 years I lived in this town, and every one of them was linked to this bar in one way or another. I witnessed one of them, or at least I think I did. A week and a half after I started working, one of our regulars came in. He wasn't a tatted-up parolee, biker, drug dealer, or any of the normal shit, but people knew not to fuck with him. Whenever someone started shit with this guy, they got a free ambulance ride. He never got charged though, because he always goaded them into tossing the first punch, and he quit the minute they hit the ground. I guess that's legally important, because the cops always said if it was self-defense, then he could go. Anyway, one night a couple of off-duty cops come in. They still had the uniforms on, but not the utility belt. No radios, guns, mace, any of that shit. I guess they didn't want anyone trying to start shit with them, and they used the badge to ward off any bigger idiots. It worked. Everyone kind of went quieter as the cops strode in, watching nonchalantly as they made a beeline for the guy nobody fucked with. My spidey sense was tingling. Something was up, though I was too new to say what. I started pouring beers and tried to pretend I didn't feel like a pair of tigers had just strolled into the bar. I mean, seriously, it skeeved me the fuck out. For 5 or so minutes, the cops kept it pretty buddy-buddy with the fighter, and then they started arguing. It was almost nothing at first. A little flush on their cheeks, whispers that were more urgent than a friendly chat required. The regular seemed to be trying to ignore them, like everyone else. Then he started getting drawn in, arguing back and shaking his head. Out of curiosity and self-interest, I poured him another beer and walked over for a casual, "Hey, everything all right?" All 3 of them fried me with their gaze. Whatever the fuck was going on, I wasn't welcome. Point taken. I went back to slopping beer for the rest of the dangerous idiots. Did I mention how much these assholes love to beat each other up? I mean, 'cause it was mind-blowing to a 20-something with a strange desire to not get knocked the hell out of on a regular basis. It was like they hadn't even heard of concussions or brain damage or jail or any of the million things that could have kept them out of this bar. It didn't take long. A fight broke out. The 2 cops tried to take on the regular at the same time, shouting incoherently as he pounded them both with effortless ease. The fighter was a machine. Swing, connect, turn, repeat. 2 guys, 2 cops, and he wasn't holding back any more than he did for some meathead with roid rage. Before I could even react, one of the cops was laid out cold, and the other pulled a knife. He got a lucky jab in and the regular went down, clutching his abdomen. You know, TV really gets blood wrong. It was so fucking bright, squirting between his fingers. The waitress called 911, made the report, and tried to get the bouncers involved. They'd seen the knife and weren't having anything to do with it. The stabber cop roused the other one, applied basic first aid, and then helped the ambulance crew get it taken care of. For a few days, I checked the paper and local news. I wanted to hear about the aftermath. I mean, off-duty cops stabbing a guy in a fight they started? Come on, this shit isn't supposed to happen in America. The fighter didn't come back before I left, and the cops never showed up in any investigation or breaking news story. No bar fight, no hospital stories, no crime scene investigation, nothing. I heard a couple of the other regulars wondering about it too, but by the time I'd quit less than a week later, no one had any answers. My friend who owned the place said he checked it out and couldn't find any answers either. I know I don't believe him. In any case, that was the end of my bartending career. I collected my last check and left. I still wonder about the fighter who got stabbed. Man, he was a hell of a fighter, and I'm pretty sure he enjoyed busting heads, but nobody deserves to disappear. The whole scene was just crazy as hell. The Night I Stopped Talking to Strangers at Bars by Bitterjoy Crusher. This is a mildly long one, as I'm long-winded and detail-oriented. This is a traumatic encounter I had in May of 2012. It was a Saturday night, and I went out to a bar with friends. We were dancing and being obnoxious, of course, and this dude kept looking at us. I didn't pay him much mind. He was cute, but I was not in the mood to talk to some stranger. Anyway, the night progressed, and one of my friends gave him my number, without my permission, by the way. That guy and I are no longer friends due to his disregard for anyone but himself. So this dude texted me. Okay. I responded politely, and we ended up having some decent conversations. We had a lot in common. Movie taste, music taste, and general witty banter. I'm including this so you understand why I chose to go out with this stranger. 2 weeks later, we meet up at the same bar. We hung out, had some beers, but he was drinking pretty excessively. My dad is an alcoholic, so that is always a red flag for me. He seemed to be handling himself well, though, and a few of my friends showed up for support and potential protection. A few hours into the date, he told me how pretty I am. Aw, I thought, that's always nice to hear. We were sitting out on the deck, drinking and enjoying the evening. I hadn't yet realized my friends went into the bar, and no other patrons were outside. He didn't stop there, though. This dude leaned in close to my ear, and I could feel the hot breath, and it was not a turn-on. I could smell the shitty Bud Light on his breath mixed with garlic or something. Then he started whispering to me, "You remind me a lot of my ex." Oh, fuck, I thought. I had already been losing interest in this situation, but that feeling was growing immensely. Then he continued, "I thought she was a spy, you know, for the government. I used to have bad schizophrenia. Psychiatrists are bullshit, though, so I self-medicated with OxyContin and shit." I pulled back, but he put his arms around my shoulders and pulled me back. I felt my ear knock against his teeth, and my whole body grew numb with fear. And this is when I noticed we were alone. I'm gonna go use the restroom, I said. I fucking needed out. Fight or flight kicked in, and he looked strong. "I'm not done," he said, squeezing tighter on my shoulders. "Just let me tell you this." I pushed my elbow against his ribs, casually but forcefully. I didn't want to escalate anything, but I needed the fuck out. "I really have to pee quick. I'll come right back." I put my other hand on the bench we were sitting on, using the force to try to propel me up. The fucker pulled me back down, and he fucking chuckled like it was cute or something. "Sorry," he said. "Just stay. I have something important to tell you." I remember he started rubbing my arm like he was trying to soothe me into complacency. So I screamed. I screamed loud, "Let me go! Stop! Get off of me!" I screamed words that I hoped would alert people that I wasn't just a drunken loudmouth. "What the fuck? I seriously, like what?" he asked. I remember the smell of garlic had gone away, and the alcohol was all I could smell. It triggered even more panic in me, as it was reminiscent of my father's alcoholic outbursts. "Ashley! Ashley!" I screamed out for my best friend, and still, no one came out. It was one of those patios that's fenced in, with a large, thick metal door to get back into the bar. There were no windows to see in either. I still didn't struggle physically. I worked with individuals who had severe aggression and behavioral disorders, and had been trained to believe that the more you physically fight, the more it escalates. "The voices aren't bad anymore. I medicate with alcohol now," he shouted. He didn't sound mad, though. He seemed confused, like he didn't understand why I was so incredibly fucking done with it. My ex. She may have been a spy. I stabbed her by accident. Kind of. She left me, and you look like her, and I like that, okay? I just care about you. I want to be with you. His voice calmed through that conversation. The smell of garlic came back, and I felt my body grow a little limp in resignation. And then the door opened, a loud clunk as the metal hit the brick. Laughter. Ashley's laugh. I looked up, and Ashley's laugh stopped, her body still. Get the bouncer, I said. I'm so grateful I de-escalated situations for a living. It probably saved me from instigating further. The dude let go of me quickly. You're still a bitch, he said. You're gonna rot. At that point, I stood and ran, or walked fast, or did a silly slow run. I don't really remember. The adrenaline was pumping and nothing seemed real. I went towards my friends. The four of us ran into the bar, right behind Ashley, who already had the bouncer with her. After I saw Ashley with the bouncer, I sat on a stool and fell apart. I was sobbing and shaking and heaving. The bartender gave me so many napkins to blow my nose with, eventually giving me an entire stack of them. Everyone had heard about the situation, so no one bothered me. My friend stayed with me that night. Everything was a huge blur after I got out of his grip at the bar. I don't remember talking to the bouncer or the owner, who banned the guy for life. And I don't really remember the encounter in my journal or eating an entire pizza by myself. The next day, I changed my phone number immediately. I avoid the area where that bar is located, and I don't really go out much at all. I went through the worst case scenarios, and that only escalated the anxiety from the encounter. My therapist helped out a lot. So, dude from the bar, let's not meet for real. Would-Be College Kidnappers by Taylor Dr. A little background. My dad is a police officer, ex-military, and my mom is one of those types of people who worries about literally everything. This led them to teaching me how to behave in a variety of potentially dangerous situations, from code words to self-defense. I wish I were kidding, but we even have a plan for zombie apocalypse, literally any potential disaster, and we've discussed it. Fortunately, I lived a very safe life and did not have to use their advice very often. I am also an incredibly light sleeper. Even a text vibration on my phone wakes me up immediately. During the summer before my third year of college, I was living with a good friend of mine. We can call her E. E was very book smart, but somehow had zero situational awareness, as well as a horrible tendency to be the most annoying person you've ever met in your life after having one drink. At the time of this story, I was 20 and she was already 21. This led to a few nights of me getting pissed off, because she would want to go to the cooler bars her other friends wanted to go to, but that I couldn't get into with my shitty fake. This particular night, we had talked about going out and had even gotten ready together. Then, right before we were supposed to leave, she switched it up and decided she was actually going to meet her other friends at a bar I couldn't go to, and with an, "Oh, I'm so sorry." I wasn't able to tell her she can't do something, but I walked away visibly pissed and went to bed early. I woke up at around 3 because I had received a few texts in a row. Knowing it was her, I was extremely tempted to turn over and go back to bed. I decided to quick check and see what she wanted and saw multiple separate texts from E that said things like, "OMG! Wake up! Please wake up! I'm in so much trouble. Please help me!" Unfortunately, I've gotten a new phone since this happened and don't have access to the original texts. I asked her what was happening, and she tells me with lots of misspellings because, well, alcohol, that her friends had left her at the bar. They didn't answer when she tried to call them, and that when she was standing outside the bar trying to call her friends, 2 older guys asked if she needed help. She told them that she was just trying to get a hold of her friends so she could go home. To this day, I question why she didn't just order an Uber when she realized she was alone, but, again, alcohol. These 2 men point to a car and say it's their Uber, and if she'd like to go, they don't mind dropping her off at home. E decides this sounds like a great idea and gets into the car with them. One guy sits up front with the driver, and one sits in the back with E. This is obviously when things start to go south. E notices that they appear to be going in the wrong direction and makes a comment that she lives the other way. No one says anything to her. Now, the car has gotten onto a major highway that you would take if you wanted to leave our large city for the neighboring large city approximately 45 minutes away. This is the point where she started texting me for help. I tell her she needs to speak up, but she keeps telling me that she's too afraid to say anything. I tell her to say that she's going to be sick. No Uber driver will want you puking in the car and will pull over so you can get out. This is what my mom had drilled into my head as a kid. If you don't like something someone is doing in a car, tell them you're going to be sick. E refuses because she's too afraid. She finally asks where they're going, and they say the large city. And she tells them, no, I live in the other city. And the guys laugh and say, well, just think of it as a suburb of your city. Now, E has gone into full panic mode. I have already run out of the house and am attempting to follow them. I have her sending me to her location on her iPhone repeatedly so I can try to catch them. I'm telling her to get the fuck out of the car and do not get back in. I was flying down the highway, but they still had maybe a 20-minute head start. I wanted to call the police because, 1, we obviously need help, and 2, I'm driving in excess of 100 miles an hour down the highway and do not want to be pulled over. Unfortunately, E can't give me a description of what car she's in. No color, no make, nothing. I don't know how she finally spoke up or what she even said, but she was able to get the Uber driver to stop at a gas station that was, quite literally, the only thing around. Like it was an exit to a gas station, just to enter back onto the highway. There was nothing else in the area. She's texting me to tell me they're pulling into a gas station, and I tell her to get her ass into a bathroom stall, lock the door, and do not move until I get there. And if she can't do that, go stand next to the clerk and tell him to call the police, because she does not know these men, but I swear to God, E, don't get back in the car. I don't care if they carry you kicking and screaming, you fight tooth and nail to stay out of that car, I told her. But of course, this is E, and she didn't listen. She instead chose to hide behind the gas station. At this point, I was just minutes away and figured I could get there before they went looking for her. Alright, I was a 20-year-old female, average to shorter height and average weight. Athletic, but not a Hulk by any means. So I have no idea what I thought I would be able to do to these two 30-year-old guys or whatever, and their Uber driver. I had also run out of bed without getting dressed, so I was wearing fleece Guitar Hero pajama pants and a sports bra. No shoes. I pull into the gas station parking lot, and their car is the only one there. I got out of my car and marched up to the one standing by the gas station wall and quite literally went toe-to-toe with him, and in my best, low, cold, furious anger voice, asked him where E was and what the hell he thought he was doing. This grown man couldn't look me in the eyes and didn't bother speaking, but rather pointed to the back of the building. I yelled to E to get out here right now, we are going home. She comes around the building wearing only her bra and jeans, no shirt. I put her in my car and turn around to start yelling at the men, but as I turned, their Uber was already squeaking tires to get out of the station. E and I had a very quiet ride home, and I turned into my mother and told her that I wasn't mad at her. She was crying and apologizing to me, but I told her she was safe now, but that next time she needs to react quickly and speak up for herself, because who knows what could have happened. Oh, and she didn't have a shirt on because there was a hill behind the gas station that she fell down and into a bramble patch. Her shirt was covered in stickers. This story isn't as outright terrifying as most of the ones I read about, but thinking about what could have happened had I not caught up with them, and just how easy it was them to do this chills me to the bone. So, to my two would-be rapist kidnappers, let's not meet for your sake. Crazy Drunk, submitted by TomTom41. When I was in college, there was a strip of bars that everyone went to, and there were plenty to choose from. There were old man bars, nightclub dance places, live music places, and then those ones off the beaten path that were really only full of townies. For some reason, my friends and I liked to hit those up once in a while. They were quieter, and you could get a game of pool or darts in without having to wait for a row of quarters ahead of you. When we first started going to this one place, I'll call it Aces because it's still open and I don't want to use their real name, the townies were unsure of us. I mean, we were just punk kids from the school. But when they realized we were just going to hang out, drink beer, shoot pool, they got to like us. Except this one guy. I'll call him Steve. He used to complain to the bartenders and owners that we shouldn't be there, but we tipped very well, and they didn't care. Shit, we caused less problems than a lot of the townies. At any rate, we were hanging out one Saturday night watching a hockey game before we went downtown to hook up with some other friends and find some women. It was me, let's call me Tom, my friends Scott, and Mike, who we called Big Mike. We're still all good friends, and Mike is still a big dude. 6'4", 220, built like a brick shithouse. We're all just hanging out and drinking and playing pool and darts with the locals. I should call them locals. They were cool, not like a lot of the townies who hated us students and always started shit. And we were laughing and betting on the game with stupid bets like who would score next in the hockey game and stuff like that. Then in comes Steve. Everyone could see that he was already pretty well in the bag. So he sits on a bar stool and asks for a beer, and then just starts staring at the screen, not saying anything. The bartender tries talking to him, and he doesn't say anything back. We keep playing and laughing and having a good time, and then Scott pipes up and says, "All right, boys, one more game of cricket and we should vamoose." Suddenly, Steve spins on his stool and says, "What the fuck is that? What the fuck is vamoose?" Everyone just kind of looks at each other like, what the fuck? And he says it again. "What the fuck is vamoose? Is that some wetback shit talk?" I should say that the college I went to was not super rural, but it wasn't near a big city either. The town over did have a large Hispanic population, though, and I could sense there was some tension with this guy. So as we're just standing there, the bartender leans over and says, "Take it easy, Steve, it's just an expression," and gets him another beer. He keeps looking at us for another minute, and then turns around. We're all like, what the fuck? I put some quarters in to play cricket. It was me and Scott versus two of the locals. I'll call them Paul and Jerry. Mike and Tom play a game of 9-ball and finish before we beat our friends by one bullseye and some points. Jerry laughingly yells out, "That's some serious bullshit right there," and we all shake hands, and then I fall forward as Steve has jumped up and pushed me in the back. Jerry and Paul grab me and say, "What the fuck was that?" By now, the bartender and two other guys are grabbing Steve and telling him to cut the shit, but he's not calming down. Finally he does, and everyone is just looking at him. And as drunk as he was, he quickly grabbed a bottle and chucked it right at us, and nearly hit Scott in the face before it smashed into the dart machine. Everybody jumped into action as Steve ran at us. Big Mike jumped in front of him, and the guy takes a swing, and Mike just turns and the punch hits his arm. Mike grabs the guy by the throat, while two locals grab Steve, and the bartender is yelling out for everyone to just relax. He runs around the bar, and Mike lets the guy go. Long story short, Steve gets booted and told if he ever comes back, they're calling the cops. He's forced out the door, and the bartender asks if everyone is okay. We're all amped up and just babbling away the way that you do when you're full of adrenaline. The bartender yells out, Okay, shots on the house for everyone." We all start laughing and salute to each other. Shaking hands with everyone, the three of us say we'll see everybody around and head out to the next place. Everything in this town is within walking distance, but Ace's was about a mile or so from the main strip. As we're walking, I get an uneasy feeling and keep looking behind us as we walk through a neighborhood on the sidewalk. Scott notices and asks, "What's up?" "Nothing," I say. "I just got a weird vibe going on, man." We got to the next place, and it was about 11 o'clock, so people were really starting to show up in large numbers, and we're having a good time with our friends, and we do find some ladies. I talked with this super cute girl that was on the swim team at our school. At the end of the night, I offered to walk her home. Yeah, I know, sly fox move, right? She says she's going to her friend's house, but we exchanged numbers, and she says she wants to get together tomorrow. I ended up dating her for 5 years before we broke up. We're still friends. Awesome woman, but I digress. So now there's 5 of us, as Mark and Hank are joining the 3 of us for one last wobbly pop before we head back to our apartment complex. We're all a little stewed, and maybe that's why we didn't notice what was going on as we walked down the main street back home. We were being followed by 4 guys. As the downtown part ended and we got into neighborhoods, Big Mike says he needs to take a leak and runs behind a bush in front of a house. We all stop to wait for him when suddenly we hear him yell out. I turn and see the 4 guys we didn't know were there behind us, behind Mike, and what happened was Steve had rounded up some of his buddies and followed us around all night. Steve had smashed the back of Mike's knees with a piece of rebar. The other guy started to hit him when he buckled. We all jumped over the bushes and just blasted into these guys. I'm only 5'11" and about 180 pounds, and some of these guys were way bigger, but I didn't care. Again, I'm sure beer had something to do with it. Everyone kind of picks a guy, and I slam into Steve, and he drops the piece of rebar. I scrambled to pick it up and just started beating him with it. He's on his chest with his hands on his head, and I'm wailing away on his back like a maniac. He's yelling, "Stop! Stop!" And I'm fucking crazy now, and I'm yelling all this macho bullshit back at him, and every time I smash him, I'm saying, "Stop! How about now, motherfucker?" Next thing I know, I've got stars in my head, as one of the other guys had knocked down Hank and punched me in the side of the head. Everything was in slow motion, and I see Scott and Mark kicking a guy on the ground. Big Mike is going to town on another townie, and this other dude throwing me another punch to the gut. Steve is on the ground all fucked up, and the guy with me flicks out a knife and swings at me, and in my haze, I stumble backwards over Steve, and the guy just grazes my head right above my temple. I fall back and can feel something warm on my face, and blood flows into my eye. By now, the lights from the house we're at have come on, and everyone kind of stops. Steve and his buddies kind of get up and start running off, and Big Mike grabs me and tells me we have to go. A guy comes out on the porch and says he's called the cops, and now I know we really need to go. We start running, but like a shithead, all that does is make the blood pour out of my head cut faster, so I take my flannel shirt off and wrap a sleeve around it. We finally get back to our apartment complex, and Scott is freaking out about getting me to a hospital, but Mark, who was studying to be a personal trainer, looked at it and said it wasn't that bad and wouldn't need stitches. He cleaned it up, and I looked at everyone. Scott's got a swollen eye, Hank has dried blood on his nose, and the only two guys unscathed are Big Mike and Mark. We've started coming down from the adrenaline rush, and Mike has thrown us all a beer, and I've got a massive headache starting up. That's when the front window of our place cracked. Someone had thrown something at it. Mike and Mark ran to the door and opened it to look out into the parking lot, and it was quiet and lit only by a couple of street lamps with that orangish glow. Then, another rock came whizzing by and hit the door right next to them. 3 of the guys, including Steve, were at the edge of the lot and throwing shit at our place. Hank, Mike, and Mark run out at them, and I call the cops. I mean, enough was enough. I watched them fighting from our stoop and told the police what was going on. Steve saw me and made a run for me, but he tripped on a parking block and cannoned into a car and smashed his face on a headlight. Honestly, I started laughing. But then I stopped when I saw him pull a gun from his pocket. I yelled to my guys that there was a gun, and that's when this drunk shithead started pulling the trigger. By now the lights are turning on in all of the apartments, and people are at their windows and doors or coming outside wondering what the fuck is going on. The police can hear what's going on and are asking me what I can tell them, and that's when Steve stumbles towards me and points the gun at me. I back up into my place when he pulls the trigger. Nothing happened. He looks down at it like he's wondering what happened too, when Mark comes up and throws a huge haymaker from behind, and I heard Steve's jaw snap. Steve falls to the ground, the other guys had run off, and we can hear the police sirens coming around the corner. Long story shorter, the police arrested Steve for assault and a slew of other things, and it turns out he had more warrants to go with that. They caught the other guys later that night, or morning, I guess. My friends and I didn't get away scot-free, though. After telling the police the entire story, we got reamed for underage drinking, which I guess we were guilty of. But they didn't take any of our beer, which I thought was funny. We found out later that they did talk to the guys at Aces about us hanging around in there, and that needed to come to an end. Funny? It didn't. About a month later, we were there when one of the cops came in off duty with his wife. He saw us and just shook his head. We had to show up in court to testify as to what Steve did, and I'll be honest, my parents were not thrilled with me and what I had gotten myself into. I still have the scar above my eye, but it's not that bad. Looking back at what I wrote, I kind of glossed over the gun thing because it happened so fast. At the time, it was just surreal. But now that I have kids and I'm looking back at that situation, it's terrifying to me. I mean, I came so close to getting shot, and that scares the shit out of me as an adult. I don't remember what happened to Steve and his friends other than going to jail, but I do know I spent 3 more years at that school and in that area, and I never saw them again. Thanks for listening, gang. Hope you enjoyed this volume of scary stories. Please like, subscribe, and share if you already haven't, and follow me on social media. A list of my outlets is in the description. I'd also like to thank Joletta for the tip. She's the latest subscriber on Patreon. If you feel so inclined to leaving me a tip, a link to Patreon is also in the description. Looking forward to my collaboration with Swamp Dweller, and I'll be back again with more creepy stories for you real soon. Until then, remember, be wary of things that go bump in the night. It could be anything. A ghost, a monster, or the guy next door.